Thanks for staying with us here on The Real Story. We're back with Mayor-elect Arunan Arulampalam ahead of inauguration. Arunan, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks for having me.
So, we just talked to current mayor, Luke Bronin, and now we have you on Mayor-elect. We're kind of making this the mayor's office transition special episode. So since we last talked after you were elected back in November, you've really been focusing on setting up this transition team as well as getting people in place for your administration. You've really brought in people from all over Hartford and all over the state. So tell me a little bit how that process has been going and how you're feeling now.
Yeah, I mean, it's been great. It's something that we had started to think through as we got through to the end of the election, and we launched a transition site at midnight on election night and had co-chairs the next day. And then we built out these transition policy committees. We've got 11 committees.
Wow.
We now have about 200 people engaged in those different policy committees and coming up with really great ideas around arts and culture and economic development and housing and workforce development, and just a whole range of kind of creative ideas for our city to move us forward, and trying to bring as many stakeholders together in that conversation. And at the same time, I've been trying to hire into the administration and building out my team, and we announced a team that I think is the best team, best qualified team to take over the city, and they are very young and look like the city itself, and I think that's no coincidence, but a team that I'm really excited about, has a lot of energy and is ready to hit the ground running.
Why was that so important for you? You mentioned specifically both having young people and having people who look like this city. Why was that so important for you?
I have always thought that there's so much about the lived experience of the city, understanding what it's like for Hartford residents, that is really hard to teach someone.
Sure.
And there, with young teams, with new teams, there might be a little bit of a learning curve, but building leadership, building the next generation of leadership, I think is so important. And I know that they are all humble enough to seek out the advice of those who've been through this before. I know that they're all eager to do a good job because it's their city and they love the city. But it's really important that the faces of Hartford residents are reflected in my team. But also, this was just the best and brightest, I think. They're young and they look like the city because we cast a wide net and tried to find the best and brightest.
Yeah. So we know it has been a whirlwind since you were campaigning and wrapped up, but let's talk about your journey up until this point. You had a lot of massive support during your campaign, both from the streets of Hartford to elected state officials endorsing you. Looking back so far on, your many roles and now the role you're about to take on, how you ended up here as the next mayor of Connecticut's capital city. Did you ever think, a couple years ago before this campaign that you would be where you are today?
It's something I'd thought about as a Hartford resident from time to time, but it was really, I got a call one day from a community leader whom I love, Diane Lewis, and she said, "You should really think about running for mayor." And I told her all the reasons that I wasn't sure about it, and she persisted, and so I talked to a few more people that I loved and trusted, Andrea Comer and some others who have been in this community who understand Hartford, and got a lot of encouragement to think about it, and started that journey of just talking to people one by one. And I think a lot of people were surprised by the level of support that I was able to build in a short period of time, but for me it was all relations-based, and it was about sitting down with people one by one in their living rooms and out for coffee, asking them really honest, earnest questions, and trying to judge their feedback.
And you mentioned being a Hartford resident. Hartford really is your home and your city for not just you, but also your family. For those who don't know, what does life look like for you as a Hartford resident, but also as the father of 5 kids here in this city?
Our kids have so much fun with this city. I mean, it is the best city. They once, my wife is a pastor of a local church, and when they installed her, they put together a video of our kids talking about the things they loved about Hartford, and the kids capture so much of what adults miss. I think the culture, the vibrancy, the diversity, even sometimes the history. Although I think they get a little sick of me droning on about that. But we live in a neighborhood that looks like our people say our family looks like the UN. We live in a neighborhood that looks like our family, that shares values with our family, that has so much potential and struggles in many ways, but a neighborhood we're really bought into and we believe in. And Hartford is a great place for families too. I mean, that's something I talked to a lot of, we were talking about this before, I talked to a lot of folks who've been in Hartford, had families that came from Hartford, and they said, Hartford was great around the holidays back then, and we were just talking about how fun it is for kids now in Hartford to go to the skating rink downtown, go to Pratt Street, go to Winter Fair, and see all the life that's in Hartford. There's something that you can't really replicate in many of the communities around us.
Yeah. And we know you're just starting, or I should say just getting ready to start. There's still a couple days, a couple weeks left. But, say we're back here a few years from now and you're leaving office. What does success in Hartford look like for you, or what do you, at that time, hope that you would see?
Hopefully more than just a few years from now. But, the base of what we think about when we think about our legacy in the city as an administration is reconnecting the city, reconnecting communities, reconnecting people to communities, and that means building out the physical infrastructure for our downtown to stretch into our neighborhoods and rebuild our commercial corridors so that those neighborhoods function as arteries of the lifeblood of the culture and vibrancy of the city into our downtown, and we can be one connected, cohesive whole, and reconnecting people to each other, rebuilding a sense of the village, and investing in our youth and creating places for our youth to go, and investing in community aspects of economic development and community aspects of civic engagement, and bringing together these communities all across Hartford to think and act like one unified whole.
Yeah. And you've mentioned with the transition team having these 11 committees now and already seeing hundreds of ideas submitted. There tends to be a lot of eyes and pressure in your first 30 days in office, and then your first 6 months, and then your first year. But, we've talked about the many things you want to accomplish. What are those first things on the list, those top priorities for you when you take office?
I don't know if we have enough time in this segment. We've got this small transition office, and the walls of my office have butcher paper all over that has all these bullet points of all the things we want to accomplish, and we're trying to put them in buckets of 100 days and 6 months and 1 year and 4 years. But early on, really building some of the morale around City Hall, getting people excited to come work in our City Hall and be a part of our City Hall, and improving the customer service for residents through that. Engaging our corporate community in our plans for the future, and getting them around the table and making sure they are involved and invested in where we're going as a city, and investing in sports and rec early on. I really want to rebuild, and before this first summer comes and kids are sitting around with nowhere to go, I really want to rebuild the sports and rec program that can allow kids in every neighborhood to have recreational activities, have athletic and sports activities, have stuff to do all summer long.
And one of the priorities I know you've mentioned to me before when we've been talking that definitely is not maybe a first 6 months, I think it's kind of a continuing issue, is housing. Yeah. It's been a problem for Hartford, it's been a problem for the whole state of Connecticut, and nationally, everywhere in the country. And as I said, this is a continuing issue. This is something that's gonna go across your entire term. But the housing crisis obviously isn't new, but the landscape of affordable, accessible, and respectable housing is really fluid and changing. This is your background, though, as leader of the Hartford Land Bank. So how do you hope Hartford's housing changes under your administration? Are there any concrete steps that you want to take or you've already thought about taking when it comes to the housing crisis?
Yeah, and those are priorities that will last throughout the next 4 years and hopefully for a while after that. But look, when we think about housing, I think we need a mix of housing. And in communities like this, we've got a 7% home ownership rate here in Frog Hollow, and 50% of all of our units are deed restricted affordable housing units. And so it becomes really difficult to build middle class communities in a lot of our neighborhoods. And there are a lot of neighborhoods around us that really aren't picking up quite as much of the weight when it comes to affordable housing. And so building communities in which folks can build wealth here in the city of Hartford is really important. And look, if we are able to succeed in our economic development goals and bring back these old commercial corridors, bring back and stitch together our neighborhoods and our downtown, bring back a lot of vibrancy and economic activity, but we do it by pushing out the families that have been here, that have toiled here, that have bled here in our neighborhoods for generations. I don't think we'll be any better off. And that's what so many other communities have done. My hope is that Hartford can do things differently, that we can really create wealth, really build middle class in our neighborhoods, like so many other communities have done for generations.
Absolutely. And something about your campaign, you really tried to include most of the state, which was actually at times controversial to a lot of your opponents. But, you know, every meeting, party, event also represented a lot of the city and a lot of your neighborhood, as well as other communities across the state. So many residents were really a part of your win. How do you plan on keeping Hartford engaged and honest as you move forward as mayor?
You know, it's happened through our transition. We've had a number of stakeholders involved in transition teams, but we've also had these public hearings, and we've had packed houses both in the north end and the south end to talk about issues with residents directly. I think when the campaign ends, you don't stop talking about residents. You don't stop spending time in neighborhoods, and you I think, have to talk about what's possible in the city. Talk about what we can do if we work together. Not just, you know, here's the project that we think we can get done, here's the housing development, or here's the business. You know, what can we build together as a community, and what part do residents play in that role? Empowering residents right where they are and reconnecting residents to each other and to this broader community is going to be such a key and a core tenet of this administration.
And last thing before we let you go here, just a couple weeks, as we've been saying, until this switch will happen and you'll officially take over. So looking, you know, down the barrel of inauguration, what are you most excited about?
Well, we've got this inaugural ball that's going to be a lot of fun, and I think people in Hartford are ready for something to celebrate. I've gotten so much excitement from people just on the road who've passed me, and we're going to highlight all the best of what Hartford is, our arts, our local restaurants. We're going to have a fun night. I'm excited to engage Hartford residents in these conversations about what they want their communities to look like and how we can bring to bear the resources we have to accomplish that together. And I'm excited because, you know, I think I said this last time I was on, in our campaign, we really had every part of Hartford engaged and involved and speaking with one unified voice. Right. And I think there's such opportunity to continue that momentum going, to instill in ourselves a sense of unity, a sense of what we can do together, and how strong we can be if North End and South End and West End and downtown could stand together. And, you know, to all of our neighbors, I would stand by every comment I made during the campaign. Everyone should be concerned about the future of the city of Hartford. This city, our capital city, is so important to everybody in the region, and there's so much to be excited about. There's so much coming on the horizon in the city, and I hope everybody around us gets excited too. And
we asked Mayor Bronin in our last segment, but, you know, really quickly, any message to these Hartford residents, to those who, you know, voted and supported for you, and those who didn't as well, because, you know, when you're elected, you end up being mayor of those who maybe voted for you and also those who didn't vote for you. Well, the faith that the city of Hartford has placed in me is something that I will take seriously every day of my life. And I will wake up each morning fighting for the residents of this city. I will engage the residents of the city in conversation and make sure that they're at the table, their voices are heard, and that they're empowered. But more than anything, my hope is that everyone feels excited about what is coming to the city, not just those who voted for me. I told people at some of these forums that my supporters sometimes call themselves Team Arunan, but Team Arunan ended on November 7th, and we are all Team Hartford now. We're all rowing in one direction, and it's time for us to work together because we need every single piece of this beautiful tapestry that makes up the city. Well, Mayor-elect Arunan Arulampalam, soon to be Mayor Arulampalam, thank you so much as always for being here. Thank you, Emma. And that does it for us here on The Real Story, but we will, of course, continue to closely cover this transition and once new leadership takes office here in the capital city. That does it for us here on The Real Story, but if you want to watch these segments again, you can head to fox61.com or download the free Fox 61 News app, and you can watch The Real Story every Sunday at 10 a.m. right here on Fox 61 or streaming on Fox 61 Plus. Have a great rest of your morning.